So I'm going to introduce myself. I'm not, so I want to kind of take up some things that have been in the room. I'm coming at this from a perspective that's different from Latinists who identifies now as non-binary, is using use they have English. I'll go through a little bit of my linguistic history because I'm coming at this from another kind of creative angle, from an angle though as sort of an amateur linguist and a polyglot of being in the classroom, not addressing so much gender identity or sexuality in the ancient world. I'm not a historian. I'm not an area studies person. I never really even considered myself a classicist, even though I'm now in a PhD program for classics. So I'm actually going to take this sort of, take you through a little bit of a personal narrative, pull out some themes about research interests and a way that I think about with myself and my own story, how to address this, not because I'm so interesting, but because I found that my students actually and how I've learned, how they've taught me to teach Latin is also has changed, fits in with, for example, my role at my school as the SAGA advisor, which is Sexuality and Gender Alliance. It is a SAGA, right? And so that has been a very sort of dialectical process. I don't want to talk at you, but so jump in. I will try and be aware. I also kind of get involved. So please jump in. I don't want to make this like a standard, read from a paper conference stuff. I do have a paper. It's just notes. Cool. All right. So picking up on some things that have been in the room, Phobos, Volcor Latine. A lot of people, what I really liked as a non-binary thing was Yapobox. I like it for two reasons. One is the ox ending is commutative. The other one is it tends to mean you do it too much because I do talk too much. So Robox, detox, various things. So that gives you kind of a sense of, I'm looking at this from a playful angle, from an angle of being trans, non-binary, all this stuff. Is only a diagnosis if we need it for insurance reasons. But I want to tie it to larger issues of pointages, of language ideology, of sort of these things that are happening in linguistics, while you guys should fully know that I am adopting this jargon, not being a linguist, that's not my specialty. So I'm sort of coming in as a artist, teacher kind of folks, and working from that. So Yapobox in Latin, I don't actually use it Phobos, but it's a good story. In German, I used to use ihn, and now I use zir to answer to speak to some folks' questions about modern languages. One theme I want to pull out is how much do we deal with living communities who have native speakers, who have a whole range of native speakers in different societal contexts. We deal with German. I don't know much about it, but when I was in a program, to make me more comfortable as a non-binary person, someone says, well, there's this thing, zir. And I was like, at first I was like, no, this is error, and I don't want to be annoying to the professors. And then my teacher was so supportive that she said, no, we want to learn it too. It's unfamiliar to us, but she sent around a little cheat sheet for people to learn my pronouns, German teachers to learn my pronouns, saying, oh, it's an opportunity for us to learn too. So I want to throw out stuff like that where modern languages become relevant because they have native speakers. Because these issues of pointages and how much are we traditional versus, if we want to use the word progressive or revolutionary, all these coded, loaded words, how much do we want to be comparative versus how much is in a unique situation, how much do we deal with Latinitas or the correct Neo-Latin in, 400 years ago in Europe versus, people, Polish speakers versus the Jesuits versus all of these different people who are, versus scientists who are truly international and maybe use Esperanto. Think about Esperanto, which is a quote universal, but also a very European focused language. So there's all these issues in Latinitas and Neo-Latin of power, who's speaking to who, what registers, when are they using the vernacular versus Latin. This is where I get a little tangential, I'm sorry. So it's the question of modern languages, but also the sort of synchronic through in the world, in German, in Latin America, in Spanish, Latinx communities, Afro-Latino communities. There's such a rich kind of wealth of linguistic diversity and also cultural diversity tied to linguistic communities that I think as Latinists we have to speak to that, and I think that's part of the relevancy, and that's part of what we can actually kind of more ethically tell people Latin is a valuable thing to study without being racist supremacists and teaching to a very specific group. If we bring in discussions of language and power, it can be very powerful both to kind of include students more and also to take a more critical lens on, from a linguistic perspective, not just from a perspective of mythology or civilization or how we use the classes. So that's where I'm coming from. I also am coming from, I taught Latin and I taught Spanish. I taught Spanish as a white, no Hispanic background, non-native speaker, but a trained teacher who was specialized in students who are both highly gifted, complicated word, but gifted, also with mental health challenges or special needs. I'm trained as a special educator. So in the Spanish context, I want to talk a little bit, I used él. I only started thinking really about gender and just male pronoun. Male identifying, whatever it is, male grammatical gender pronoun. And I kind of changed my practice as I met students who were not binary identified. I actually changed how I identified because of my students and my comfort level. So I'm going to now go through a less tangential and more linear kind of version of this. First, I've thrown out a lot of stuff. Does anyone have like threads they want me to focus on, pick up on, anything like that? All right, cool. So, like I said, my class context is also one where I'm thinking a lot about English as a second language or English as a new language as speakers. So special ed education and pedagogy and ESL are very much tied in this country because the ESL kids are seen as the stupid ones and so are the special ed kids. It's a linguistic deficit model. It's a model by linguism that says, well, if you learn your new language, if you can't speak your heritage language because you'll not learn English as well, it's not taking seriously issues of power, of prestige languages, that sort of thing. So I always had in my mind ESL, even though I was a special educator. And I also had in my mind my own fascination. I was taught in a grammatical way. I did really well as more polyglot with very traditional, like math brain, also white and elite ways of talking about language education. So all this was kind of swirling around as I was beginning teaching. I can't read my analog clock. Great, cool. Thank you. All right, so I'm also in a class context with a lot of students with autism, with trauma. In this case, in my current school, it's pretty homogenous racially, and most are American citizens, but it's all US citizens. But I've also taught in places where you're teaching English. I started as an English student teacher, teaching English to students from Jordan, from Syria, who are coming as asylum seekers to the US. So sometimes when I was thinking about sort of this linguistic justice issue and how do I introduce pronouns, I'm thinking about, well, I've heard a lot of folks say, and there's a lot of context in which very clear English cognates, and we lean towards neologisms in Latin that are sort of less, I'll call it conservative, I don't mean it in any particular way, a less sort of verging towards the classical canon as defined either by sort of our classes today or Cicero or whoever. You would kind of lean towards neologism, intelligence, or stupidos is a word, it doesn't mean what it means in Latin. You would lean towards that because in a classroom where English literacy or standard English is a barrier, and you're in a Latin classroom, it's a justice issue, it's an inclusion issue, you may want to go for really clear English cognates. But in my own spoken Latin experience, one of the most powerful things is I have friends, we don't share a language except Latin. And that's also a justice thing. That's a justice thing internationally. That's saying in some context, the actual better ethical for me and for a lot of people I talk to thing to do is to say, let's cut out any intermediary languages and make it possible to be in a Latin-only environment where we're still addressing gender issues, all these things. So this is everything swirling around my head as I began teaching. I was coming in as a trans person, but I'm in a very binary profession. So my first time as a student teacher, 2021, my student teacher, I was like, are they gonna call me Miss Banks or Mr. Banks? Oh no, what do I do? And it's like, I don't really do that. Like, I just gonna do first names, whatever. That was a really bad decision because I didn't respect the student teacher. and it didn't help that my mentor teacher used her last name. But there's all these questions. And I started as more of a scientist, started as a science teacher. I'm dealing with issues of justice in language and power of the canon as an English teacher, and mythology and translation. So more of the kind of cultural work kind of stuff, what is a canon, what is the reception of it. And I finally got to be able to be a language teacher. I'm excited. I'm polyglot, and I'm also a polyglot who's aware that like some of the polyglot communities is kind of shearing away the context and saying, let's treat language as a game, which has a rich history in linguistics, which has a rich kind of history in math and sciences, and also just is a way of empowering folks. But there's also, if you share your context and culture, can also be a thing where you're kind of sample collecting. And what are the ramifications of that? So I'm coming in as a polyglot, as a special ed teacher, as someone who struggles with mental health stuff, just like some of my students, and also someone who's really interested in kind of all aspects of this language thing. So I started out with really the gender issues, coming to more of an actual topic that I'm supposed to be talking about. I started out with gender issues and pronouns, really more in Spanish, because there was a contemporary conversation. I could say, well, I want to bring in issues of immigration to my classroom. I want to use common English context. It happens that in my classroom, English is the common first language. So great, I'll think about, and I want to educate myself about Latinx communities, about all the different issues or just conversations about Latinidad, about bilingualism, about heritage speakers, and the various kind of ways that language education both empowers and that helps people gain power and privilege, and also is involved in that sort of violence of replicating it. So I was much more comfortable in my Spanish classroom saying, hey guys, we talked about giving lots of options, right? And that's kind of always my meaning with students. But I want to give options, and I want to say, look, it's safe to kind of choose these options, to wait around these confusing things where it's so complicated and like, how are we gonna, you're in Latin 1, how are we gonna do it? The thing is, you're a middle school student, you're a high school student, you have lots of life experience. You may be a beginner in the language, and that's a tenet of a lot of communicative language teaching, of a lot of ways that we want to do inclusive language, is respect the people in the room, respect their minds, respect their hearts, their traumas, their histories, all these things. And the way to do that is we want to find ways specific to each classroom and each group of kids, but also principles where I'm going to make an intelligent and expert choice. Am I going to use English targets? Where am I going to fall? What options am I going to present them? And how am I going to help them think through it critically? I might link it to, well, this was used in church Latin. Well, this is what Cicero said about, or this is what Erasmus said about being about Quirinianus. This is what people said throughout the ages. This is what Dante said as he was navigating between Italian vernacular and Latin. So I am giving them choices in the same way that we've been talking about, in the same way that Patty is. And I'm playing with it, but I'm also saying it's safe to play. I'm going to anchor you simply in some conversations that are happening. I want to anchor you in the scholarship as I understand it, both pedagogically and historically grounded. And these conversations that we're having, I want to bring this room, our expertise into the classroom, because that's how I can translate to them. That's how I can kind of use my power and passing and all these things to say, yes, I'm giving you options, but not only are there options that I'm kind of tailoring to you, but also if I ask you questions, let's have a dialogue, a real one, and I know what scholarships to go to, or I know what people to go to who are thinking about these things in what I think is an ethical way. So I can help you think through the issues, not just here they are, all are. But I was much more comfortable doing that in Spanish because I knew I was a non-native speaker. I felt really weird about it, and I felt really like, oh my god, I'm this foreign guy like walking into a Spanish class. And so I was very much automatically saying I have to rely on my community. I have to really name these issues immediately up front and deal with that. In a Latin sense, I didn't do it so much. I kind of played more of the game because I was like, well, I'm trans and I'm not going to introduce that at the beginning because it's a little complicated, blah, blah, blah. So, but the Spanish practice kind of helped me say, oh, there are issues of ideology and power, and there is not a native speaking community, but a spoken Latin community that has to reckon with this. How are we going to use that Spanish and modern language practice to bring it into Latin? but in a way that's interesting scholarship-wise, in a way that, the same way this morning we were talking about critical perception, for those who were in part of that, how do we do it in actually a much more linguistically, in most ways, more interesting way, not just more just, but also just more rigorous in terms of engaging with a broader range of things, less sort of siloed, and also just it makes the field a lot more interesting. It makes Latin a lot more interesting. It's not sort of capitulating to lower rigor, if you're not doing the grammatical method, that sort of thing. It just says, well, actually, we're addressing all these big issues, and a lot one of us. So, my Latin issues were coming up in terms of coinages. I was very aware of things like the Lexicon Morganianum and various kind of things in spoken Latin, different kind of phoneticula in the spoken Latin world, week-long emergent events, various philosophies about do we allow English? Is there a jus durandum, in other words, a language, a Latin pledge? And I, again, involved on these issues. So, and where it started really in that Latin classroom class was how much do we have fun, like Patty was saying, how much do we have fun and how much do we learn to read? And what do we learn to read? Because, you know, a lot of some folks, this goes back to Cicero and Varro and Erasmus and Dante and all these people throughout their long history of discussions about Latin as a lingua franca, as a language of power, as a quote European or Western language. This goes all the way back. How much do we coin? How much is novel? What's the problem? So my stance at that point was, well, I'm not using quote proper latinidad, where latinidad or something like that. I want to be sensitive to it. I was more conservative in a certain way about coinages, and I would do, I like the lexical work, I like the little reading philological work, and the digital tools we have now to put some sense to it. So I like that, and that fit with, this is the way I can do justice. I'm not going to be a historian, I'm not going to talk about gender identity, except in a personal way, but my angle was language and opening up the conversation about what we're pointing and why. So for example, when I taught the only other conference talk I gave as a class in a classic space was the three little pigs in the Latin classroom, and I did use hampare and pampare as first conjugation verbs. And I was okay with that because my kids loved it. And we knew it was not going to be found in Asian authors, so that was fine. It was building community in a way that was not doing violence to the Latin language or something like that, because we all knew we were playing around. It was very comprehensible to them, and it was a lot of fun. Other times, though, the thing was, and this is a critique you'll hear, I've heard, of spoken Latin in a lot of more academic classes, spaces, where it's classics as for academic profession, as a scholarly discipline, as opposed to Latin as a language in the spoken Latin space, is, well, you guys, like, what do? You like, you go to dinner, you cook in Latin? Yes, but yes, it's fun, it's social, and a lot of people do it for those reasons, but it also is a way towards proficiency in reading authors, ancient authors, in what I see as a more equitable way, because if people do want, if our goal is, there's this literature, if you have different feelings and different orientations in terms of, do we want to restrict it, do we want to go Neo-Latin, do we want to go the whole heritage, are we more thinking of Latin just as another language? There's a whole big literature that if our goal, and often our administration's goal, but also our goals personally as teachers, is to expose and to get kids access to the originals. Well, we don't maybe want to do too many coinages, we want to have our fun, or we do want to do coinages, absolutely, but we want to be informed by what various people at various times have considered a canon in order to address these questions, which actually have become much deeper and also are still fun. So, while I'm finding my place in here, if anyone wants to bring stuff up, this would be a very good time. Okay. Okay. So I'm having fun. I'm also very grounded in the scholarship, and it happens to be my research interest, so this is very convenient for me, and I don't have to learn everything about being a historian because I love history, but professionally I'm kind of useless at it. So I enjoy being a linguist, and how do I do that in a just way? How do I do that in a creative way, in a way that's honoring me as trans, as students, as non-binary, all these different things, without kind of saying, well, it's male, female, or non-binary, or trans, which is a quaternary. But okay. So, going to go kind of a more personal angle, which is then going to come back to this coinage issue and how we can deal with the lesson on. So my first experience as a spoken Latinist, I came from a math background. I did a very grammar translation method, and then I didn't read any Latin for like a year because I didn't have any vocabulary. It was really fun. So I found spoken Latin. I was like, these are my people, thank God. And I really kind of dove into the living in it, kind of using it as a living language. And it paralleled more my experience loving other languages, growing up in New York, surrounded by Spanish, and never being a language teacher, but never really learning in a classroom. I took a total of 10 weeks each of Latin and Greek, and that was my Latin and Greek education. I wasn't coming from a young age. So I was coming to this as someone who had experience learning languages, had done some grammar translation type stuff, and had a math brain, so I could transfer it more easily than some people, but didn't have any vocabulary. And we took a use random. I was at a conventiculum, and this was in 2017. The trans-military ban was going on, and I took the use random. I also the language question. Oh, no, my Latin is moved. I'm like, let's not talk about politics. I want to respect the language much. I actually wanted to be safe. I didn't know what they were coming from, like if we had a common language, any of this stuff. But I said, oh no, let's just stick to the easy stuff. That's hard. And that was great for the time because it let me in the community. It let me have sort of a linguistic wealth of various communities within that. Also, while going home and being like, this is a great, wonderful, open Latin space, and these are my Latin people. And also, I'm going home crying at the end and not wanting to go to events because, well, it's a military ban. I wasn't going to go to the military, but also the world hates me, maybe I'm good. So, dealing with all this stuff, and that's kind of, again, affecting my practice. Okay. So I think I will move to, I guess, how we can, or how I found out that we can discuss these complex issues in Latin in a linguistic way, a rather linguistically informed way, in a way that's treating Latin as very deeply, the details of the language itself, not just the translation, is a very important and wonderful and lovable thing, and also a way that's being smart about and just honest about larger questions of social history, of the role of Latin, of Rome, of whatever we need, various people need as civilization in the classroom and in our modern Latin communities. So we can discuss these issues in Latin, and I think that's part of the work here. We've done various ways, various models of it in spoken sessions, in critical reception. We can do this, and we actually already have a Latin language, and we, I think, have to hold each other accountable to what in these spaces. So we can come here and say, what do we do? And so I want to talk a little bit about how we talk about these issues. And this is coming into how I talk about it in the classroom. I know I'm not addressing gender specifically a lot, but that is probably my particular classroom context that I'm going to fit into in a little bit. Okay, hold on. So what's our language? So inclusus is what Marcus is when he's shut in his room and being punished horribly. So inclusio maybe isn't the right Latin word for what we mean today by inclusion. We have sexus, we have genus, we have gens, we have patria, we have all these very powerful words. We have familia and potestas. All these words that speak to power, to ideology, to systemata, to all these things. But we have to think, well, what do they mean for our context? Not just looking back and saying, we can't judge, we just have to understand. We can judge. We should. Certain things in Roman history and in the reception. But how do we use maybe these simple but powerful words, how do we discuss them and build up a language, a Latin language that for us is justice-oriented, is restorative, is reclaiming for gender, but a lot of different things. While addressing these actually really interesting questions of grammatical versus biological versus social versus and all of these different questions of gender, because Latin has been instrumental and foundational in these questions about the vernacular versus and universal versus specific, all of these sort of things, even about nation creation and imperialism. There's language for this stuff in Latin already because it was intimately involved in the power structures. So let's use that. We don't necessarily have to create, misogynia. It's a great group. I love it. It's a great coinage, misogyny. There was a lot of it wrong. And we can use words where people are already talking about it in different ways. There are different ways to do it. It's not that one is more valid. It's just that sometimes thinking deeply about simple things, is a really powerful way to do this linguistic work. So, coming back to something that I will figure out and coming back to in a second. Right. So the power of simple terms was how I ended up in my practice in the classroom, because what we actually did, we didn't so much say what pronouns we did. I said that I didn't teach primarily small number of students because of the nature of the school I'm at. So we didn't have, a lot of non-binary trans students or identifying as non-sort of cis, simply because I didn't have a lot of students. So I was able to be very individual and have these conversations. We had that privilege, but it also let us build out as a class community. Let's bring issues of language, of gender, all this stuff into the classroom, into the very language and fabric of it, and not say it's an extra unit, or we're only studying social history now, or we got to the word Sarah, so now we're going to start talking about slavery. But weave this in and say this is a really interesting conversation, and how powerful if world language classes could not just be about the food, the festivals, all this stuff, but also about contemporary things and history all mixed together. And we can do that through a linguistic lens. So what I actually started to do, having conversations with students, we had some students who did, we had some students who I just referred to them by a name. We said, do you want to use Latin names, or just keep your given names or chosen names? I have one student, I'm not going to use students' names for privacy reasons, but some considerations were there are some names that translate very easily into Latin: Maximilianus, Jacobus. Well, is it Jacob, the Hebrew Bible, or is it James? So we would even get into the issues of when and why students would choose Latin names. We start to get into the ideologies of that, the ways coinages work. Sometimes people do it by sound. Often when I was studying Chinese, and it's I was Fan Kai, which is Katie Nice, which was my female name. And it was just a sound thing. So people do these, even at the level of a name, there's all these things wrapped up that are creative that you can give to students. And you're giving them options, but really you're not giving them options, you're giving them tools to make their own options. And we started that, so we started from day one with, do you want a Latin name? There are reasons for and against. And then sixth graders, I'm not giving a big lecture on right now about, these are all the ideology and power structures. So I'm saying like, hey, I heard in my last class, even if I didn't have a last class where this was true, I'm saying, this person was this and used this, and they said it was for this reason. So we're getting into all those questions. And then when it comes to pronouns, we're talking about genus, or even, I'm not one who's using in Latin 1 a lot of things about grammatical gender. I'm not even giving like one word. I'm using spoken Latin, but also not dogmatic about that. So we're talking about things like genus versus gens, and we're noticing, etymologically interesting. And we're looking at etymology a lot, not because it helps you on the SAT, although that's sometimes what I told other administrations, but because the roots, even if it's folk etymology tells us something too. So we're getting at these, there are questions of gender, there are questions of family, of power structures, of class, of all these things, but with a simple language that's not necessarily using sort of modern, we're not saying gender is socially constructed, we're saying ali idiguns, or naturalis, we're talking Actually, there's this really interesting Roman law question about things like adaptatus, natus, naturalis, natio, we're getting at it through that angle, which is just as rich, but it's a little narrower because you can grab onto concepts, sets of words that have shared roots, and make etymology more rich, and narrow in the social history to focus on a more linguistic angle by focusing on specific words, specific texts that are very rich for this one. So I want to get to a really specific question of gender and transgender or non-binary identity in terms of questions that we've had. There are folks in this room who have informed this conversation if they would be okay with being identified. I would love to cite you, but we will see. We've had many discussions with folks about how but also just how general, like how we talk about who's transgender, non-binary in Latin. And that's my angle there is looking mostly as a spoken Latinist who's really interested in the lexical issues, but again, I'm not working with TLL. I don't have the expertise, but I do have sort of an amateur, both in the sense of I'm not an expert and in the sense of so some people will say, I would say spoken transgenderist sometimes, because that's clear enough. And that's not a word, it's not an adjective. I'm not a transgender, so that's a little awkward in English, but it's maybe less awkward in Latin. I'm not transsexualis, I've heard that one too, but now that you're 19, you never know, people use it and that's fine. So people will have different answers and that's absolutely great. I'm looking at it from a particular angle where my kind of commitments are, I call myself non-binary, I actually just usually say queer, and if I'm supposed to focus on gender, I'll just say non-binary because neutrum in the neither sense. And so I was looking at how can I kind of express that, how non-central gender is to my own identity, but also how rich it is in sort of historical sense. How it's a social construction that doesn't mean, and I think about that more so than biology, but, and I don't want to think about it in terms of the DSM, the Diagnostic Statistics Manual, and psychiatrists and other clinical professionals are bound in various ways to use. And so I would say assume transgenderist when maybe I was in a space that I thought I'd be more hostile to that or wouldn't understand. I'm not going to use kind of specialized terms either in the sense of so many is not specialized terms, but in some spaces it really is. And so I'm going to use very clear terms simply to be able to state I am in this space, you have to deal with me, I'm not going to be ashamed and just like pretend, which is also okay to pretend. But in the spaces where I was in a mental place where I was like, I'm going to assert myself here and say assume transgenderist for my own comfort, but also for opening up a conversation. In that case, I'm using the genitive description. So, I'm kind of satisfying the sort of grammatical needs to be like, well, what is that? The sort of big person who will respond, well, what is transgender anyway? And I'm like, oh, it's a gender called trans. And that's one way I can address it to people who may not be as interested in the sort of language or specifically sort of justice-oriented lens. In other spaces, I would say, and actually that's usually what I would use when I brought it up at all. I also used ille as my Latin pronoun. I'm kind of one of those people who I'm like, I respect the whole spectrum of reasons that people care and don't. I don't use the word dead name for I just call it like former name, previous name, email name sometimes. So I wanted to bring that sort of historical piece because part of having male passing privilege was also losing the history of a lot of people do that to one kind of violence is, or complicated kind of violence is, we are not read as people with histories as certain sort of formulations of ourselves. So I wanted to bring in my own history, which is also as a language learner. So assume transgenderist, it's audience and purpose, right? I'm saying that when I want to kind of assert, I want to be safe, or I want to know if I'm safe, I have someone who reacts. My favorite one, though, and I will end the picture with that, we'll see, so actually I'll give a little bit more of the background. This is a discussion that was happening in a Facebook group, and again, I'm going to do all that, but some things came that you might expect. We're talking, some people are saying sexus, genus, we're recommending scholarship on the gender and sex in Latin, they both in the sort of grammatical, biological, racial, all this sort of stuff. There's a lot of good scholarship being brought up, which was really exciting because it's such a rich field again, critical reception, language ideology is currently in all these disciplines. And then my contribution was the verb teresiai. So the person in this room who knows more specifically who came up with that idea, are you okay with me identifying you? Okay, so Joel Dirkman, hello. Joel we were having a conversation in the cafe, and he brought this to my attention. I think it was the adjective form that was attested to Teresianos.
A 12th century
right, yeah.
guide used the verb teresiai.
But it's on Google Books, so I could verify. So this was my context was and I really, because even before I got from Joel, this verb that appears, I'm pretty sure it's a hot box development on. It's got to be. It would not satisfy the people of the lexicon imprimatis mutatis, or the people who think that vulgar is what vulgo and vulgate and vernacular all kind of are related. But it's some kind of authority, right? It's some kind of thing that I can say, here's precedent, has legal power, no, has legal power in the spoken language community, depends who you ask, has power at all, yes, for me, it's cool. So teresiare, this, so the verb does not exist as far as I know in this first owners, correct?
No, I mean, in this guy's work it does.
So but it's teresiare, the adjective, yeah? I'm sorry, I'm not putting this off of that. So, but we came up with the verb, and teresianos was the attested thing in this guy's work, who I can't cite, even though I like to cite people because I don't remember them so obscure. Before I knew about this particular verb, I was like, Tiresias is a really cool figure. I read Ovid and I was like, wow, some of the non-binary folks, they're prophets, they're visionaries, they're not just non-binary and sort of like don't fit into a category sense, they're like, hey, I have all this gender experience, I've been a guy, I've been a woman, I've been all these different versions of this, and I have a history, and let me tell you. And that's their power. So teresiare, Joel made me aware that this was a verb in Latin, this was an adjective in Latin, and I said, I don't care about the source, someone's used it, it may be a hot box development, but I'm going to make it a thing because that's awesome. Because teresiare, we coined the verb, right? Or something. It's sort of like a book Pringle. Well, it needs to be like Tiresias, instar, Tiresi, yes, Tiresi, yeah, Tiresi, thank you. So, I like that again because it allows you to express in Latin style. Yes. Yes, thank you. And I will. So I'm going to put up a Google Doc.
Yeah.
It is.
Teresiare desiderare, mas erat beneficio naturae, sed in feminam optavit pulpiter degenerare.
So spelling of first conjugation, because when we're creating new words, new verbs, it's always first conjugation. Not really. This is meant to be like Tiresias. The thing is, I don't use this in most contexts, but in this context of this chat, I was like, hey, there's a way someone didn't mean it in this way at all, but there's a way to say I'm like Tiresias in Latin and use it to express Tangent, or my version of Tangent. So just in the sense of giving options, but the thing was that required my friend in Latin that speaking expert Joel over here, that required a whole community of people to say, hey, there's a super obscure hot box going on. It's not philology in the traditional sense. We're using Google Books, we're using digital tools, but we can do that because Neo-Latin is so wide that we have to actually search it in like very googly ways. So we're kind of pushing forward, what is philology? What are all these questions, linguistic questions? How do we do this new work? How do we do it in an unruly social environment, linguistic environment? Neo-Latin, what is that? It's so big. Reception, what is that? It's so big. Identity, what do they mean by all this stuff? So you're getting at these really big questions in really philological ways. Philology also has a history with these things, but a lot of us who ended up in Latin and are here have some sort of complicated relationship of love or whatever. It's at least long-term with grammar and language and playing around and all this stuff. So where we find ourselves in Latin spaces having these questions where we're like, I'm uncomfortable, or or I'm really uncomfortable, or I'm panicking, or what the hell, like I can't do this. But we're still here and we have to figure it out. So this is my way of saying it is actually a really rich field. It's a really interesting, not this particular thing, but in this sort of way of dealing with what is a canon and has a lot to offer as a way of dealing with the field as it is, if it means the Itas Aurea, if it means, we buy things in gold and silver Latin and Humanitatis. Do we want to do that? Well, we at least want to know why and who else did it and what the positionality is, all this stuff. So the way I'm bringing this into my classroom is in a creative way, in a generative way, where we're dealing with modern communities. We're dealing with well, what's the utopia here? Maybe the utopia is Latin actually has native speakers again, but we want to be smarter. We don't want to say, well, it has to, so we'll do whatever it takes, which is one approach to keeping the classics alive. Well, it should die if it's a supremacist sort of thing where it's so attached to the canon. But as I think I've definitely seen today, as I've seen in this audience and other audiences, it's such a cool, there's so much to it. There's so much that we've gotten out of it that means that we're still here, even though it is violent and powerful in all the ways of that word, that if we bring that into our classrooms in the way that we can, and we commit to sort of being experts in the sense of living witnesses, but also people with the tools to do philology, people with the tools to understand how language is not just learning this vocabulary, whether you're taking that from a second language acquisition way, you're thinking about pedagogy, whether you're thinking about language during life etymology, book etymology, whether you're thinking about history, you can kind of shoehorn a lot of that into the classroom, but it's not really shoehorning. It's not fake or kind of on the fringe, or if it is, it's a really cool fringe, where these sort of very micro level philological tools and these pronouns are what we use in the Latin classroom, and big questions of social history are coming together, and that's a way forward, I think, which is the strange kind of constellation of my interest in Neo-Latin reception, and not in Neo-Latin specifically as a linguistic thing, or as a language, is it a vernacular, is it a lingua franca, how does it interact? And all of this, we can bring it to the Latin classroom. We don't have to be experts in ancient race or gender identity stuff. We should know about that stuff, I think. We should know who to go to, whether it's on Twitter or open bibliographies or critical pedagogy or open syllabi, any of this stuff. But we can be the expert. We can give people a lot of options and be the experts in how to make an ethical choice, given the people we are and given that we're still here, even though the field is so messed up. So that's kind of my angle in terms of gender, among other things, as a non-binary person in the Latin classroom. The thing I'll actually end with is something that's more about because I need to end on like a linguistic pun, is the idea of amici, or the idea of the masculine as default. I had this really interesting conversation with someone at a commentaculum at a spoken Latin event where one solution that people have to that is to say amici amicaeque, which is more inclusive in some ways, right? It's awesome. We don't want to say if it's all male identified people and one woman, then a default male. That's not great. It's wrong. But it was weird to me because I actually felt more kind of invisible and more anxious because I was like, okay, so we have men and women in the group. That's great. So we're real binary, right? So I don't know the answer to this, but I just wanted to throw that out there because it was in the room. With the amici question, I actually really like, common gender now might be easier, so now it's something. But there is an argument to be made, it's been made in Spanish and other modern languages that have this default male, where if we reform it and we talk about this idea that is it a male default or is it just a default, or can we rewrite the narrative? Actually, amici says is all genders or could be, or if there's an all gender option. So actually, so just ending on that point, because thinking critically about it in the ways that we try and be inclusive, sometimes it's inclusive for some people, it would be really like, wow, you're saying amici and you're not defaulting. Wow, thank you. And then for some people, I'll be like, yeah, I'm really on board. Wow, I feel really anxious. Why do I feel anxious? Oh, like we just did the binary thing. So all these big questions, little questions, connected. Trust yourselves to kind of be people who are involved in these conversations or listening to people ramble, and therefore trying to sort of form this language. There's a lot of different ways to do justice work, a linguistic angle, or even a philological angle. If we reimagine what all this stuff is one, give people options, give students options, but bring all your training and your scholarships, your various selves to work. Cool. Oh, one last thing. I was not able to prepare a more kind of formal thing, but there will be a Google Doc that's available with resources. One really important thing, if you're bringing the questions of gender identity into the Latin classroom, you may get students who are really unwilling and really personal heavy shit to you. Know your counselors, know who's good, know who's going to be able to deal with these issues, know your mandatory reporting laws. So that practical side that I forgot to get to is actually really important, is part of it. So part of those resources will be ways to educate yourself about teaching students with these complex identities, and part of that will also be the Teresa example, some kind of walkthroughs of how to kind of do this process and some examples of